Oh, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. It's the pre-show. We're going to get started in about 10 minutes. It is our Network Plus study group today. So if you've tuned in for Network Plus, you're in the right place. If you're watching this in the replay, if it doesn't say live up there at the top, then you can always click ahead about 10 minutes till we get started, or you can hang out here in the chat. I am going to make sure I can get the chat. Let's pop it out here. Pop out the chat. Let's get this on this side of the screen and the chat on this side of the screen. Fantastic. I love it. Welcome, everybody. We've got all Network Plus Q&A today, so it should be a pretty good day of Q and A, both of those. Get that going. Hello, everyone. Hello, chat room. Oh, congratulations, Primera, for passing your Security Plus exam last week. Fantastic. That's a tough one. Well done. This is All Network Plus today. For those of you tuning in who've gotten the notification and wondering what in the world is going on, I need to make sure my phone is charged. So there's a charging cable that's now stuck behind something. There aren't a lot of cables here. How did I manage to have a charging cable get stuck? Let's put that there. I have another charging cable here that is precariously wrapped around the video. There we go. And that needs to charge the iPad. And I think that does that. That was the hard part of my day right there. That was the difficult part of this. Oh, we'll be getting to questions once we get started here. I'm just trying to make sure that things are working on my side, and they do appear to be, thankfully. We'll get that here. All right, there's London, UK. I don't know why I just think there's the other Londons are checking in, but no, it's that's how it works. Thanks for being here. DC is in the chat room. We got Missouri checking in. Portugal is here. There's Miami from Cayocho. We've got Atlanta here. We've got all over. We're getting a good mix, I think, from West Coast all the way over to Europe and other places. For instance, Ridgecrest, California, just checking in. Atlanta twice. Welcome. Louisiana is here. Indianapolis. Chicago, first time. Welcome. Good to have you here. Indiana is here. Iowa. San Diego's in. I like that. I like we've got some East Coast, West Coast, and in the middle today. Houston's here. Mesquite, Texas. Wisconsin, welcome. Georgia is here. South Carolina, North Carolina. Tupelo, Mississippi. That's a pretty good mix, I think. Maryland. My Maryland. Welcome. I've got all new questions today for Network Plus. We'll start with the performance-based question of the month, and then we'll go to the other Q&A, and then we'll open up the phone lines in the second hour and take questions from the chat room. Mexico City's here. Tulsa, Rwanda. Quite a good eclectic mix today, I would say. Here in Florida, got a little cold last night. Right now, it is 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Welcome, Japan. Midway, Florida. So Midway knows what I'm talking about. They know that it's 49 degrees right now. High 57. Oh, it's 26 in Atlanta. Nope. Thank you. Not interested. There's India's checking in. Welcome. Memphis. That would be a fun place to go. I've been there a number of times, but it's always been on business. Always been to business to Memphis on business. So that's good. Tallahassee is here. Tallahassee, Florida, where it is 49 degrees and a high of 57. Michigan is here. 7 in Michigan. How'd that cold happen? Suddenly it's all here. It's November and it's cold. I'm not sure what happened there, but there it is. 5 minutes until we get started. Thanks for being here. for our live stream. We've got all the Q&A coming. If you are looking to find the Q&A, you can pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. And there's a question waiting for you right there. So that's there. Callie is here. Chesapeake, Virginia. Michigan says it's 7 degrees last night. I'm not sure that's really what I want to do. How it works. There's Charlotte. Arizona, 66. Very nice. So that's actually quite nice for Arizona, isn't it? It's a dry 66. Not sure what that means. But there, I'm in Florida, so everything is a wet. It's always humid. It's humid or a little more humid for those. Hey, you helped pass your exam for A+. Antonio, congratulations. Very nice. Glad to hear it. Was that your first A+ exam or the second one? And what are you working on next? Belgium is here. Welcome. Still getting over this cough. I'm trying to be quick on the mute button, so none of you have to deal with any of that. Recordings are going here. Recordings are going there. Message on the website. Text messages should already have gone out to Facebook and Twitter and those things. So that's done. Emails have been sent out. I think we're in pretty good shape right here. Last week was Core 2. Congratulations. Studying for the network/CCNA. So are you going to wait until February, the February CCNA changes, to even worry about that? Or are you kind of studying ahead? Because I think a lot of the CCNA is going to be similar. I think it's going to be a much harder exam. And it does not seem to be, on the CCNA changes, does not seem to be as coding intensive as people made it appear to be at the beginning. Like most things relating to networking and IT, we don't do programming, we do automation, we do scripting. And it doesn't look like you have to know any programming languages for the new CCNA, but I'm glad that the companies are starting to put the automation in the certifications, because it's just a normal part of what we do. It's just a standard issue thing that we've done forever, so why not qualify it? And in fact, on the exam, quantify it. So you actually get points for that. Gastonia is checking in North Carolina. Welcome. Network Plus, then Security Plus. You got a plan. Now's a good time of the year, I think, to study, isn't it? Because it's cold outside. There's, things are kind of dying down at work. Although if you're in retail, things are ramping up. But for a lot of people, work's getting a little calmer. There's a lot of time off. Security Plus group is a week from today for this month, for November. You can always find out when the next events are going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar and find out what the next event is going to be. It's always on /calendar. There's a calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website and calendar links along the right side sidebar. Romania is here. Kentucky is here. Welcome. Thanks for being here. LA, 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Very nice. Very nice. Such nice weather out there. We got about a minute to go. We'll get started. Welcome, LA. Past A+, past Network Plus, taking Network Plus next Tuesday. We'll be sending good juju your direction. Wisconsin is here. Again, welcome. Kissimmee, welcome. That's where I'd like to be right now. I have plans to be there soon. That'll be fun. Hello, Scotland. Me and Mrs. Professor Messer went to Scotland this summer, and we got to get back. Now's a great time to be in Scotland. The holidays. You got the Christmas stuff in Edinburgh. It's so nice. Bolivia's checking in. Dallas, Texas. Rochester, New York. It's cold and snowy. Wow. Who is getting that 16-inch MacBook Pro? That was announced today. That looked exciting. I like the screens are getting bigger. As the number of people using computers are getting older, the laptop screens are starting to get big again. So maybe in 5 years will be 22-inch laptops, which I would love. I think that would be awesome. But I don't think that's most people. I think it's time we get started with this craziness. Let's see what buttons I need to push on this side to make sure that this is going to work properly. That looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. I think it's time, everybody. Let's go. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2019 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. Thanks for joining us for this 1 hour of Q&A, where I will ask you Network Plus questions that I have written. They're all brand new. No one's ever seen these before. And you will answer them online, and we all get to see together how we did. That'll be our first hour. For the second hour, we're going to turn this thing around, and I will take questions from you. We'll take questions from the chat room. We'll take questions from the phone lines. I'll give you all the information about that as we get closer to those things. Right now, let's start with a question. The way you will answer these questions is you will go to professormesser.com/QA. So open up a new browser window and simply go to that URL. There's also an app you can get for your mobile device. That app is the Socrative Student app. That's the name of the app. This is a service we use called Socrative, and it's the student app that you want. There's a teacher app. That's the one for me. You want the one for the Socrative Student app, and it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you will not be able to see the question that is sitting there waiting for you when you get there that asks, the local telecommunications provider is installing a new WAN link at the corporate office. Which of the following would best describe this installation point? Now, if you think that question looks familiar, you're right, because that question is one from last month. This is our study group rewind question, just to make sure you can get in and see all the things you need to see and make sure you can answer the questions. And why do I have a different rewind question on here? I have a completely different rewind question. Have I even got the right thing up and running? Now I'm wondering myself if I've got the right things up and running on my screen. So that's a very different question than what you are going to see. Let's see what I have. Just when you plan on having everything work perfect. Well, I got the right name up here. No, that's not the right. Yeah, that's the right date. Is that the right date for everything? It is. We've got everything in the right place. I'm wondering if I really do have the right thing in the right place. We're going to find out in just a moment, because that's not the right date on here. That's the January one. So stay where you are, everybody. Should we rewind to January again? No, we're not going to do January again, I promise you. Let's get the right thing up on your screen, or it's just going to be a very, very fast time. Stay exactly where you are. We're going to go back to the quizzes. I'm going to launch a different one. See what happens when I don't pay attention to the screens. It's all live, people. We're not making this up. Now, if you go to professormesser.com/QA, you may have to refresh your screen. You will see something very different. See, we all make mistakes. I make them constantly. And there's a good example of one. There you go. ProfessorMesser.com/QA will get you there. If you are looking for the room name, it's Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. That's where you should go. So now, the local telecommunications provider is installing a new WAN link at the corporate office. Which of the following would best describe this installation point? Would it be yes, I want to do a lot of different things here. Would it be to open the security and privacy screen and make sure that my computer is working now that we've got everybody live and wanting to do this? Yes, that's exactly what we would like to do. I promise we will get here in just a moment. Okay, this is great. So local telecommunications providers at the CSU, DSU, is it a DMARC? Is it an IDF? Is it a COS or is it a DMZ? Finally, we got to the answers. People on the podcast are wondering what in the world is going on in this live stream. The provider is installing a new WAN link at the corporate office. Which of the following would best describe this installation point? Is it CSU, DSU? Is it a DMARC? Is it an IDF? Is it a COS or is it a DMZ? You think you know the answer? Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. That would be the way to do it right there. I think that's the perfect way to do it, in fact. is go to that link and you'll be able to lock in those answers. While you're doing that, I'll remind you that we have a daily pop quiz question for A+. We have weekly pop quiz questions for Network Plus out on ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. Feel free to follow along. We've also got all of our videos for Network Plus out on YouTube at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. And occasionally we'll stick a Q&A out on Instagram as well. You may want to follow us there. Don't forget, now the holidays are coming up. One way that you can help support the site and not have to spend any money doing it is to simply go to ProfessorMesser.com/Amazon if you're planning to purchase anything at the Amazon website. Just click that link to start shopping there. They don't charge you anything extra, but they send over to us a little bit of a commission, and it certainly helps keeps the lights on over here. Today, we're going to do all Q&A from the Network Plus exam. The current version of the Network Plus exam is the N10007. This was released in March of last year, so we're about halfway through the lifetime of this particular certification, maybe a little bit less. It's a 90-minute exam. You have to answer a maximum of 90 questions. There will be a lot of different kinds of questions on the exam. There will be, of course, the multiple choice questions, just like the one we were working on, where you have a question and many answers to choose from. But there are also performance-based questions on the exam. Those performance-based questions will be a number of different types of questions. We're going to do a performance-based question in just a moment. Don't forget that my entire Network Plus course, every minute of every video, is available for you to watch online for free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. You don't even I don't even know that you're watching them. All I see are numbers that are going up. So this is very available. All you have to do is go to the Professor Messer website. Some people would like an offline version of these courses. I have one for sale. You can find out about that at ProfessorMesser.com/GetNetPlus. It includes audio. It includes course notes. We'll talk about those in a minute as well. This study group, as well as all the replays, are available out on iTunes and other favorite podcasting listening services. Some of you use Spotify. Some of you use other podcasting programs. You can find out more about this at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. And you'll be able not only to listen to the Network Plus, but also the A Plus and the Security Plus study groups as well. If you check back in about a day, you'll also find that the YouTube video description has been updated with all of the timestamps. Thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who goes through all of these videos, has to listen to this whole thing that we're doing, and she puts timestamps in. So if you're ever wanting to jump to a particular question or a particular answer, this is one very, very quick and easy way to do it. Please feel free to take advantage of that. It usually takes about a day or so to get that up and running, but you can go back well into the archives and see all of those things. Let's go back to the question we asked, which was a local telecommunications provider. It's installing a new WAN link at the corporate office. Which of the following would best describe this installation point? 73% of you must have remembered from last month, because this is our rewind question, that this is a demarcation point. That's what that stands for. That is exactly where you would be installing a new WAN link. All of those get installed into the demarcation point. That is the point where on one side of the demarcation point, it's the provider's responsibility to make sure everything is working properly. And on the other side of the demarcation point, it is your responsibility to make sure everything is working properly. Usually on your side of the demarc, you will have different types of equipment, such as perhaps a CSU DSU. So a lot of you, 12% of you said CSU DSU. That's actually a piece of equipment and does not designate a particular installation point. In fact, some of your installation points won't even use a CSU DSU to have those things. It's kind of nice to have. IDF, COS, and DMZ are single digits on those. IDFs would be that intermediate point where you would have usually an MDF. The main distribution frame is your data center. And then you have all of the other distribution frames that are the intermediate points that are usually outside of the data center, perhaps on a floor of a building, for instance, would be an IDF. The class of service is a protocol, type of protocol setting, so class of service would not apply here. And a DMZ is describing a demilitarized zone, a place where you would put other types of equipment. That is not where you would put a new WAN link. It's instead where you would put services that need to be accessed from people that are on the outside of your network. So by far, the best possible answer here is DMARC. And in fact, 73% of you did choose B, DMARC. That is the right answer. You must have remembered that from last month. DMARC can be something very simple, by the way. It can just be a box on a wall. You probably have a DMARC for your house where they're bringing in the internet connection. So that's your DMARC that is on your house, usually in a building, an office. It's usually in your data center on the wall to have those things there. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with your DMARC configuration. Now that we are up and running, we can see the questions that are in front of us. Now that we know we are looking at the right questions, see why we do this first question? Because it's not always you that has to get things on the right track. It's sometimes me that has to get things on the right track. And I think we are now. I have a question for you that is a performance-based question. Many of you who have watched this before know that the very first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. And in order to understand what you're about to see, you have to know what a performance-based question is. CompTIA defines a performance-based question really as anything but multiple choice. So this could be a fill-in-the-blank question. It could pop you into a command prompt and ask you to complete a function. It could provide you with a matching where you have to match different things on the screen. Maybe you have to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what it's going to be, but it's always going to be topics that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. It's just a different way to ask the questions. So let's do our very first question of the day, the brand new question of the day that is a performance-based question. Remember, do not answer this question in the chat room. You want to answer this question at professormesser.com/QA. And the question asks, from the command line, identify the routers used to communicate with your DNS server at 9.9.9.9. Can't even see it on the screen because my big head is there. Let's take my head off the screen. Maybe that would be good if I got rid of this. There we go. From the command line, identify the routers used to communicate with your DNS server at 9.9.9.9. How would you do that from the command line? And I've got a command prompt ready for you to type in at professormesser.com/QA. Again, please don't answer in the chat room. We're not going to answer any of the questions today in the chat room. You're always going to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock those in. A number of you are putting in some very good guesses at this. I think most of us know what this one happens to be. I like that everybody's trying. I like that everybody's putting in an answer, which is exactly what you should be doing on your exam. And occasionally on these questions on the exam, you get more than one chance to get it right. You may type in something, it would say, well, that didn't work. Try it again. Well, let me try that one. Did that work? Try it again. And eventually you will find the right thing. So you do get a little bit of help on the exam with these things. So this is a fill-in-the-blank question effectively. So go to professormesser.com/QA and fill in the blank for the one that you're looking at there. I think a lot of you, I'm looking through the ones that are coming through. So as I'm cycling through the results, I can see that a lot of you are on the right track. A lot of you have the right answers here. Some of you, I'll give you a hint. Some of you are doing this in Linux or Mac OS. Some of you are completing this in Windows. Now on the screen is a Windows prompt. However, I will accept either. So if you think you know what this is, technically, if you're in a Windows prompt on the exam, it's probably going to want you to put in a Windows command. So I didn't specifically say Windows in the question, so you do have to look very carefully at the type of prompt that you're at to make sure that you do put in the right thing to have that there. And for most of you, you did this pretty good. So what would you type in to be able to do this? The best answer that I could come up with, if you wanted to see all of the routers used between you and that DNS server, you would use traceRT in Windows, or just generically, this would be traceroute. If you tell somebody Windows run a traceroute, they know to type in traceRT. The function that we are performing is a traceroute function. This allows us to map the path that a packet is taking between us and another device. And by mapping the route, I mean we see exactly what routers are every step along the way. For our question, we wanted to identify all of the routers used to communicate to our server. So that's why we chose trace route. Some of you in the answers chose some other things. You chose things like NS lookup, which is a great way to see what the IP address of a device happens to be or what the name of a device happens to be based on its IP address. But we wanted to know what the route is, what all the routes are between us and that other place. And NS lookup won't tell us those routes. Trace route does, though. It uses the ICMP time exceeded messages to be able to provide information about how far it's getting along the way and when it's not able to get any farther. And in the video that I use on this for trace route, this is in the N10007 videos section 5.2 under command line tools. That's the name of the video. I show you graphically how the trace route command works every step along the way. To be able to track all of those individual routes, there's a really lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And it's useful if you do know how the ICMP works to be able to do that. So if we go back to that previous slide where it asks about identifying the routers used to communicate with your DNS server at 9.9.9.9, you would simply write trace RT and then put in the IP address of the device you would like to perform a trace route to, which in this particular case would be Quad 9. Quad 9 is a DNS provider. So we would type in trace RT 9.9.9.9, hit enter, and you would get, in fact, you can do that right now. Pop open a command prompt on your machine, type in trace RT, or if you're on Linux or Mac OS, type trace route, and try a trace route to 9.9.9.9, and you'll be able to see all of the routers used along the path to be able to get there. In fact, you may be surprised at just how many routers it takes to be able to get you from where you are to finally get a DNS query done at 9.9.9.9. I think you see why we call it Quad 9 now. That's a lot of nines to be able to do. Hopefully, that's something now that we are familiar with. You could be asked a question like this on your exam. So if you're at all wondering about these command lines, you can always go back to that video, section 5.2, the video command line tools. I take you through every single one of those to do that. So make sure that you are familiar with those and be able to work through all of them. And that's really useful to be able to know how to do this and when to use it. And those different tools are useful. You may get a prompt like this on your exam where it just puts you to command prompt and you do have to type these things in. So it's useful to know what all of those different commands are. Fortunately, on Network Plus, not a lot of different commands you have to know, but they do teach you the basics and the good things to know. The very first thing that you always end up doing as someone who troubleshoots a network, you have to know how to ping. Then you have to know how to trace route. And occasionally you will have to do an NS lookup or a dig. So occasionally you will run into that from time to time. Well done with this one. Most everybody, I would say at least 80% of you were spot on with this one. Some of you were old trace route users. Some of you are trace RT users, but I accept both of those coming through. So well done with that. Let's do another question. I have a brand new question for you. This is a multiple choice question. And remember, no answering in the chat room. And this is a good one. This is a question that came up in some conversations I was having earlier in the month. So let's try this question that asks, a user is moving into an older building and finds category X, 10G base T, 10 base T, or 1000 base T. Got a few options there to be able to do that. Let's see if you know what that happens to be. Go through all of these to figure out those pieces. I saw we had a little bit of a bump, but the stream's back up and running according to folks at YouTube. Poor YouTube. Occasionally they do lose a few pieces there along the way. Hopefully you can do a refresh and be able to get back to where we are. The question again is, a user's moving into an older building and finds category 5 cabling already run through the walls. That's kind of nice. So which of these would be the fastest standard supported by this cabling? Would it be 100 base TX, 10G base T, 10 base T, or 1000 base T? So we'll have to see which one of those it happens to be. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and you'll be able to see. I'm going to go ahead and look at a live view of my stream right now, and I see that indeed you can see those things. What you aren't seeing is me. I took myself off the screen on that other question. There we go. So how much better is that now that you're able to see me on the screen? That's the real key. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and be able to lock those things in right there. It may be useful to know what those happen to be. You have to know all of these different cablings to have this there. So it's there. And a question about that previous time to live and trace route is, what if a router does not decrease the time to live? All routers are going to decrease the time to live. They don't have a choice. Always a router will decrease the time to live. Otherwise, a router could allow packets to simply loop around the network forever. So there will never be a time. Now, what they could do is filter ICMP. So you end up not getting the ICMP response saying that it had a time to live expired. That's usually what happens, and you get those dots on the screen. Be able to have that there. So to be able to avoid that, there's no way to avoid it. Just have to deal with it whenever that comes through. Let's see how we did with this answer. A user is moving into an older building, finds Category 5 cabling already run through the walls. Which of these would be the fastest standard supported by this cabling? We're a little bit torn on this one. 38% of you say 100 base TX, and 30% say 1000 base T, 21% say 10 base T, 11% said 10G base T. So if we were able to put these in a particular order, you should be able to look at these standards and know what the speeds are of all four of these Ethernet standards. 10 base T is 10 megabit per second Ethernet. 100 base TX is 100 megabit networking. That's Ethernet networks. We have 1000 base T, which is a 1 gig network connection, and then 10G base T, which is a 10 gig network. So those are the orders. If we were to put these in order from slowest to fastest, that's the order we would do it in. Sort of made up a whole performance-based question right there for you. So that's how you would be able to determine what those standards are. Now, the real question is, we have Category 5 cabling. So what standards would be there? It's not often you run into Category 5 anymore. Category 5 hasn't been produced in a very, very, very long time. It's really hard to even find any that may still be around. But in this question, we've moved into an older building, and it's in the walls. So if it's there already, can we use it? It would be great if we could go really fast. Let's see what cabling types are supported by Category 5. Here's the chart that comes from my 2.1 video, copper cabling. And this chart summarizes the maximum supported Ethernet standards for Category 3, Category 5, Category 5E, Category 6, Category 6A, and Category 7. The one that tends to be the most commonly switched around for some reason in other resources is Category 5. Category 5 cabling can support both 100 base TX, and it supported it very well. And then when we came out with the 1000 base T, which was the 1 gig network, Category 5 supported that as well. You will find a lot of resources, I find, that don't think that Category 5 supported 1 gig networks. It absolutely does, and supports it quite well. But we found that we could make Category 5 cable support it just a little bit better, especially in areas where there was a lot of crosstalk. So we tightened up the standards just a little bit. In fact, there's almost no difference in the standards between Category 5 and Category 5E. So Category 5 and Category 5E both support, as its maximum supported Ethernet standard, 1000 base T. That is 1 gig networking. And I've actually seen books written that say, well, I tried it on Cat 5. I don't think it worked very well, so I'm saying it's not a standard. I'm saying that standard doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work that way. Category 5 worked perfectly fine. And the differences between 5 and 5E for your studies, you can think of them as exactly the same wire. There are such minor differences between the physical characteristics of those two standards that effectively they are the same thing. So they absolutely will support 1000 base T over 100 meters. So those of you that did answer 1000 base T, you answered D. That's exactly where you should be. So there it is. That's the one that is very effective. You start going through and trying to figure out, what should I put on this Category 5 network? Go 1 gig. Why wouldn't you go 1 gig to be able to do that? So that is your answer. Answer D, 30%. Now, the reason that chart has the 100 base TX is for the reason I just gave, because a lot of places will tell you it's 100 base TX, and it's my chart that's actually showing you 1000 base T is indeed the maximum supported Ethernet standard on that. In fact, if you wanted to delete the 1000 base TX, but a lot of people would ask me, where's 100 megabit on this chart? Because if I got rid of that, 100 megabit would never appear on this chart. And they were wondering, what happened to that? Well, it fits into category 5, but in reality, category 5, when we introduce gigabit speeds, that's why. That's why it's listed there, to have those technologies available. These can be a pretty important question too. Knowing what you can run over a connection becomes very useful. So make sure you're very familiar with this chart. You may get a few questions on the exam asking you in a particular scenario with a particular cable type, what can you use? Or maybe you want to go a certain speed. What is the minimum cable type you would use? Because as your categories get higher, your costs tend to go up. The category 6, 6As and category 7s cost a little bit more. So you've got some different options available. You should be able to work through what all those happen to be and know what those differences are. If you answered D, 1000 base T, 31% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another multiple choice question. Got one for you. Let's have a look at this question that asks, a desktop administrator needs to view the graphical desktop of a Linux workstation at a remote site. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Let's see if we know the answers that are given. The possible answers are VNC, RDP, SSH, Telnet, and IPsec. Those are your 5 different options. A desktop administrator needs to view the graphical desktop of a Linux workstation at a remote site. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Is it VNC, RDP, SSH, Telnet, or IPsec? There's your 5 options. You can lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Be able to figure out what those are. What would be the best choice for this task? That's one you can figure out by going to this section. Remember to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in those answers. This is something you may end up doing, in fact, being able to work through this. If you're at a help desk, you need to view a desktop somewhere else. In fact, if you work in a help desk, these days, are you even walking around to different machines? Whenever I worked at a help desk, I did. We were all in one building, though. So if somebody had a problem, I was on the 4th floor. If somebody had a problem on the 3rd floor, I'd go down the 3rd floor if it was something very complex. But we were a corporate help desk. When you get in these very large help desks, or you are remote, somebody's in another location, they're in another building, they're in another state, they're in another country, you're going to have to look at this device remotely. You're going to have to manage all those devices remotely. This would be a good way to do this. Let's see how you do with this particular question. I see a lot of you are locking in your answers now. Let's see how we did, though. For this one, the desktop administrator needs to view the graphical desktop of a Linux workstation at a remote site. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? 44% of you say it's answer A, VNC. 33% of you say you use RDP. 20% of you say use SSH. 2% said Telnet. 1% said IPsec. We could probably throw out those last 2. We've got a straight line there from answer A all the way down to answer E. So which one would we use? Knowing how to remotely connect to another machine, there's an entire section of the exam objectives dedicated to this. It's section 3.4. There's a video called Remote Access that talks about this. Whenever you want to be able to see a desktop, and I mean be able to see the entire graphical view, you need to know how you want to connect to this. And this helps a lot because a lot of times your user is going to be on this graphical desktop. They're going to be explaining a problem they're having. You need to see exactly what they're seeing. If you're on Microsoft, you're probably going to use Microsoft's Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP. And they're clients that you can run on practically anything to connect to devices that are using this RDP. You can use this on a Mac, on a Windows, on a Linux, on an Android, on an iOS, practically anything. You can connect using Microsoft RDP. But what if the user is not using Microsoft? What if they are not on Windows? What if they're using, like in this question, they're at the graphical desktop of a Linux workstation? You're going to need to use something that Linux can understand. And a very common graphical remote desktop for Linux is the Virtual Network Computing, or VNC. It uses a protocol called the Remote Frame Buffer, the RFB. We never talk about RFB. We always talk about, oh, is it running VNC? We always talk about VNC as the generic term that we use for remote desktop into these Linux devices. VNC also used on Mac OS. So if they're on Linux or if they're on Mac OS, VNC will work exactly the same. There is a remote functionality built into Mac OS, but if you wanted to use a third-party app, you could use one that's VNC compatible because Mac OS is one that's VNC compatible. So if you're in tech support or if you're trying to scam people out of some money, they tend to use these remote desktop applications. So you should, of course, be familiar with those, being able to work through all of those different views. The view here and the reason you knew it was VNC is the question specifically asked, a desktop administrator needs to view the graphical desktop of a Linux workstation. And that's how you knew immediately this is not going to be remote desktop protocol, because remote desktop protocol running as a service is only on Windows machines. We don't see RDP being used in other places. It's a Microsoft thing. This is Linux, so it's going to use anything but a Microsoft service. What other services are common on Linux? VNC. That is the common service that you will find. And if the 47% of you indeed answered A, VNC, got that one absolutely correct, and being able to work through that. 31% said remote desktop protocol. We all know that that's Windows, so that's not going to work on this Linux machine. 19% said SSH, secure shell. Secure shell is certainly a remote terminal access to devices such as Linux devices. Very common to use SSH, but that's only going to show you a terminal front end. It's a command line view into that operating system. And in this question, we were needing to see the graphical desktop of a Linux workstation, so SSH is not going to be able to work for us. Telnet is effectively the same functionality as SSH, except Telnet is much more insecure because it's sending all of this information in the clear. There's no encryption in Telnet. The encryption is automatically enabled. It's secure shell. It's in the name. But Telnet is not secure at all, although it is showing you a command line for that device if that device can provide that Telnet functionality. And then you've got IPsec, which is a tunneling technology that does encrypt information. You can send information from point to point over this encrypted tunnel, but has nothing to do with graphical desktops and being able to do remote desktop at all. All it is a way to reliably and securely send information from one end to the other and being able to work through those. The only possible answer here that fits this scenario is indeed A, VNC. 48% of you got that one absolutely right in being able to do that. So well done with this. That's a little bit challenging and able to find this particular piece of this. I don't know that you're going to find another option other than VNC to be able to make that work. So let's before we get to the next question, as you can see, we've already talked about cabling. We've already talked about remote desktop. We've already talked about a lot of different technologies, and we're just getting into the first few questions of the study group. The Network Plus exam is a very broad exam. It covers a lot of different topics in a lot of different areas. You've got subnetting, protocols, cabling, fiber, encryption, cabling, proxies, topologies, remote desktop, and all of those different pieces. All of this, of course, is in every single one of my videos. So if you watched all of my videos from the very beginning to the very end, you could take your own notes and be sure that you had all of that information ready for the exam. But as some of you have seen, that's a lot of videos, it's a lot of time, and you'd have to take some very good notes to be able to do that. Well, I've already taken them for you. I've already compiled everything, all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts, everything that you've seen is in these course notes. These are my N10007 course notes. In fact, I have some up on the screen right now. These are available as a PDF. There it is. These course notes, you can purchase and download these right now. 66 pages, 67 pages, somewhere in there of course notes. All of those details, all the port numbers, information about protocols, the OSI model, different unicast broadcasts. There's broadcast domains versus collision domains. It's all in here. Information about MAC addresses, CSMA-CA, CSMA-CD, what all the differences are. It's all in there in these course notes. This is one that I put together because so many people wanted. They would ask me, can you just give me the slides? Well, there's hundreds of slides. What if everything was in one place? In fact, I made a book version of it too. There's a physical version. This is one that has the same information. It's just a colorful graphical view of all of those details. You can choose to get either one. If you do get the physical version, I will give you the digital version for free. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, you'll be able to get one of those as well. And of course, every purchase of this goes back to support the website. So thank you for your ongoing support with this. It's a popular tool that people are using and finding it's really helping them when they walk into the exam and they've been able to summarize everything from the single guide. Maybe that can help you with your studies as well. You can find out about this at professormesser.com/NPCN. It stands for Network Plus Course Notes. And you've probably seen these course notes are available for Network Plus, for Security Plus, for A Plus. Anything on my website, I want to be sure you have the notes to be able to work with this as well. So feel free to have a look at those. They're all on the website, professormesser.com/NPCN. Let's do another question about these. I've got another multiple choice question for you. This one is a little weird in the way that it sounds, but this question really hits exactly where it should. It asks, which of the following would best describe something you know? Which of the following would best describe something you know? Is it a signature? Is it a smart card? Is it an IP address? Is it a PIN? Is it a fingerprint? Which of those would best describe something you know? A signature, a smart card, an IP address, a PIN, a fingerprint. Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to figure out all of the details on this. Have a look and see if you know what these happen to be. This is something you know. If you think the something you know is the answer to the question, maybe that's what it is. Yes, everything is not one of the possible options. Something you know, I know everything. If you know everything, you're in the wrong place because none of us here know everything. None of us have figured that out yet. You should start your own live stream right now because I would like to tune in. I could use some of that right now. Something you know, being able to work through that. This is one wherever I start looking at trying to figure out what do I choose. You may even want to step through and remove things you know do not apply to this particular question. This is obviously a very specific question. The question seems, if you're walking into the room, you knew nothing about this, which of these would best describe something you know? Doesn't even make sense. But this is asking a very particular question where something you know is a very particular thing. So feel free to figure out all of those. I have to figure all of these out. What would best describe something you know? Let's see how you did with this one. And in fact, people are mentioning this in the chat room that a lot of these questions you tend to have to read a couple of times because there are very specific words that are in these questions. And you will find this on the exam as well, is that one word can completely change the direction a question is going, and it will change the answers you choose. Let's see how we did with this one. Which of the following would best describe something you know? 85% of you say a PIN. A PIN is something you know. I thought a pin was like a little sticky thing. Hold your shirts together. Is that not what a pin is? 85% of you said that's what it is. 8% said IP address. 5% said signature. 3% said fingerprint. 0% said smart card. So which one is it? Something you know. Well, something you know, we're referring, of course, to a type of authentication factor. Whenever you're authenticating to a particular device, there are different factors that are considered. Things like something you know, something you have, somewhere you are, something you are. So those are different types of authentication factors. We're focusing on the something you know factor and being able to figure this out. So things that you would know, it's in your brain. There's no other way to get this without pulling it out of your brain. That is the best way to think about something you know. Things like a password. A password, probably the most common factor of authentication, is something you know, because a password is one of the most common ways to do that. So if you have a secret phrase, string of characters, that's what you would use. That's something you know as a password. A personal identification number. That's what a PIN is. It's not the pointy thing that holds your shirts together. A personal identification number, that abbreviation PIN, it's not something that you would find written. Certainly you would not write it down. It's an authentication factor. You should not write it down. The only place you're going to get a PIN is in your brain. You're the only one that knows that. It's almost like an abbreviated password, if you want to think of it that way. Commonly, we use these when we're authenticating with smart cards. If you're getting money out of an ATM machine, I know that's redundant, but an ATM card is going to ask you for a PIN, a personal identification number. You can also think of a pattern. A lot of the Android devices are looking for a pattern on the screen. And we go back and forth as to exactly what type of authentication factor. I think I'm in the camp now of something you know. A pattern, it's in your brain. Only you know the pattern you would use. I think that best applies here as well for that pattern. So something you know, a PIN certainly applies. 85% of you said a personal identification number. Yes, that is what we were looking for. We weren't fooling anybody. So let's see if we can turn this around a little bit. What type of authentication factors are in use for these other types? If these are not something you know, what other factors are they? And by the way, all of these factors are in the video in section 4.2, which is appropriately named multi-factor authentication for those. A signature, well, that's something that we sort of know, but it's more something we do. It's something that our hand does, I guess. Whenever we're working with a signature, not a fantastic authentication factor, but for a lot of things, it's close enough. So that's one that you commonly use when you're signing a check, when you're filling out a credit card slip, writing it now into a digital panel. That's signature. We're doing less of the signatures these days. IP addresses, I guess an IP address could be considered somewhere you are. That type of authentication factor, because we can often associate an IP address with a somewhat close by geographical location. Now, that is not even close to being accurate a lot of times. That has a very low level of accuracy. You can't count on IP address. I've told the story many times about doing some work for a UK company that had a presence in the United States. I was in a data center in Miami. We were doing work. And if you ever did a geographical lookup of these IP addresses in Miami, it would show you that we were in London. So that's a big difference. So you can't always trust IP addresses in that scenario. We've got a fingerprint. That's something you are. That is something that is something part of you. It's a biometric. So that is something you are with a fingerprint. And then we've got a smart card, something you have, something that is with you. Often a smart card can even be an ID badge that when you pull it out, you can plug it in and it doubles as a smart card, or you may have a separate smart card along with all of these to have those things there. So we know what all of those factors are now. The only one that is something you know is indeed D, the personal identification number. 85% of you got that one absolutely right. So well done with those. For those. Yes, the signatures are becoming less useful, are they? In the chat room, talking about signing for things. When you get a package, do any of these signatures even work right anymore? The thing that I scribbled there doesn't even come close to my signature. Somebody else is holding it. I'm trying to write on it. I don't even know why we're using that, but we do. I guess it's you put an X, so you physically were the one that put the X on the screen for all of those. Figuring out those pieces. Good answer with that one. Let's do another question. This question, again, we're doing a lot of abbreviations today. Let's do an abbreviation with this one as well. This question asks, Which of the following would be the best way to resolve an issue with SNR? Which of the following would be the best way to resolve an issue with SNR? Would it be to decrease the wireless signal strength? Would it be to change the wireless channel? Would it be to disable SSID broadcasts? Would it be to enable WPA2? Or would it be to add MAC filtering? Again, the question asks, which of the following would be the best way to resolve an issue with SNR? Would it be to decrease the wireless signal strength? Would it be to change the wireless channel? Would it be to disable SSID broadcasts? Would it be to enable WPA2? Or would it be to add MAC filtering? If you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. This is, again, a question ripped directly from the exam objectives. So go through all of the things that you think this might be. You'll be able to figure out those pieces. Go through and see if you happen to know what these questions are referring to. Now, if you don't know what this is, you have no idea what these things happen to be, then you do want to go through this list and try to figure out. Maybe you can break it down. Yeah, if you don't know what SNR is, it's going to be very difficult to answer this question. So maybe try to take a guess. That's something that is always a good plan. On your exam, we don't know a lot about the grading system that CompTIA uses, but what we do know is that you only get points if a question is right. That means that if you answer a question and you get it wrong, then when that happens, you don't get any questions taken away from you. So that's where you should go with this one, is to, of course, go through this list and see, just take a stab at it. Because if you get it right, that's a bonus. That's like free money. That's something that you can always use to make this happen. So another one that you can do with this is go through, especially if you have little time left, you got a minute left, find every question you have not answered and go through and answer all those questions. If you just put a number down, choose A for everything. I don't know. If you get any of them right, you'll get free points and you aren't penalized for guessing. So this is one where maybe you aren't penalized for guessing. So take a guess at this particular one. Everybody's Googling what SNR is though. So stop Googling that and be able to figure out what these things happen to be. Answer that question, ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Let's see how we did with this one. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve an issue with SNR? 60% of you say that you should change the wireless channel. 24% of you say you should decrease the wireless signal strength. 9% of you say you should disable SSID broadcasts. You've got 5% of you that said to add MAC filtering. And then only 2% of you said to disable WPA2. So that's the different options there. So let's talk about SNR. That is your signal to noise ratio. Signal to noise ratio. That's what we're talking about here. This is a pretty important statistic. It's a pretty important metric when you're dealing with radio signals, because you will never receive a radio signal at 100% of the signal than when it was sent. I guess in the most perfect environment, maybe you could, but in the real world, you're going to lose something along the way. There's going to be a little bit of signal loss just over distance. There's going to be signal lost as the signal bounces around or is absorbed by other things in the room. There might be other things in the room that are putting out radio frequency interference or noise. And that noise is going to create a problem hearing the main signal. So there's a ratio that you can figure out. How much of the signal am I receiving versus how much noise am I hearing? And you want to be sure that that ratio is one that is going to work out so that you're able to really discern what the signal is for these things. And we're talking specifically here about wireless technology, but signal to noise ratio applies to any signal. You'll get the same thing on copper, you'll get the same thing on fiber, but where you most usually have problems with signal to noise ratio is going to be over wireless networks. unless you have a problem. Boy, if you have a problem with your fiber, you're in trouble. And of course, you do run into problems with copper all the time with these. You would like this ratio to be pretty large. You would like to have a lot more signal than you have noise. In fact, if you have a lot of signal, you don't have to worry about the noise. The noise isn't going to affect you very much because you can still make out the signal from what's being sent. But to have a signal-to-noise ratio of 1-to-1, for example, means you have just as much signal as you have noise. That's not good. Now, in this scenario, this particular picture, our signal is the green and the noise is the red. So in this particular view of this network, this is signal and noise, over the last 5 minutes, you can see that our ratio is pretty good there. We got a pretty good ratio here of signal to noise. Our signal is so good, we don't have to worry so much about that noise. You'll always see that there's noise down there at the bottom. You just can't get rid of all of it. It's always going to be there. Here's a better picture of this. You could zoom up on it a little bit. See what the differences are with these. So this is one, and people in the chat room are mentioning this, but wait, you had to know what SNR was to be able to answer this question. That's right. And that's a pretty common thing with these questions on the exam. They will hit you with the abbreviation. And notice they're not asking you trivia questions. They're not asking you, what does SNR stand for? What is the name of SNR? Spell it out. They don't ask you that. So a lot of you spend a lot of time with your flashcards. SNR, signal noise ratio. Okay, I know what that is. It does not help you on the exam. Unless you know how that's applied, then now you've got something you can use on the exam. Oh, I know what that means. I know how you would use it. I know how we would interpret that. I know how we would use it on a network. Those are the things when you're going through your flashcards. When you see SNR, you can see that it's signal to noise ratio. Now, what's that mean? Take it the next step if you're doing those flashcards, and that will really help you on the exam to have one of those things there. This is where you really want to focus on some of the options that are here. So now that we know what signal to noise ratio is, let's see if we can break this down a little bit. Anything that we have on the network, if we have another wireless network nearby that is interfering with us, that would be noise. If we have a microwave oven that has gone off the rails and it's sending out all kinds of 2.4 gigahertz outside, it's not very good microwave oven, that would be noise. If we have other things in the network that we are using, other devices that are on similar frequencies near us, that would be noise. So one of the things that can really help us, and 59% of you were spot on with this, change the channel. Change to a different channel where the noise is not. So find the channel with the least amount of noise, and usually our most modern access points and wireless routers will do this automatically. If you tell it to find an automatic channel, it will hunt around and find the one with the best SNR, and that's the one it puts on for you. Change that wireless channel, and you may be able to find a channel where the noise levels are much quieter. Your signal is going to get through much better, and you'll have a much better signal to noise ratio. Are there software tools that measure SNR? There certainly are. The one I chose, the one I was using here, is just something I brought up on my Mac. Most of these wireless analyzers, wireless devices, not even necessarily a packet capture, but something that's able to see wireless networks, and there's a lot of free tools that do this, will be able to give you SNR information. It's something that's always available in the adapter card you're using, so that'd be very easy to use. So 25% of you said to decrease the wireless signal strength. Well, that's not going to resolve any issues with SNR. Turning down the amount of signal is simply going to make the signal to noise ratio be closer to each other. You're getting down closer to that 1-to-1 or even less. So whenever you get into those scenarios, you want more signal. You don't want less signal. So do not decrease the wireless signal strength. You want to increase your wireless signal strength to be able to make it much louder than the noise that's around you. 8% of you said to disable SSID broadcasts. The information that you're sending out is not noise, so that's not going to help you very much. Enabling or add MAC filtering, 5% said add MAC filtering. And again, you're just filtering out people that are already on your channel that are using the network normally. Those aren't noisy people. Those are normal users. And lastly, 2% said enable WPA2, which of course enables the encryption on your wireless device. Enabling WPA2 doesn't help you with your signal. The signal is that raw signal strength that's going out. Regardless of what's being sent over the air, you still have to have the best signal that you can get. Now, it's not going to help you at all. 60% of you are spot on. Change the wireless channel, and that's the best way to do it. If you're watching this study group and you'd like to get a continuing education unit credit, I guess you already have your A+, you already have your Network Plus, or even have Security Plus. This can apply towards that if you're someone who's collecting the continuing education unit credits. But you have to follow these instructions. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, and there's a Contact Us link. This will bring up a form where you can put in your name, put in your email address. That one's pretty important because I'll be emailing this back to you. And there is a subject line. And in that subject line, if you could put that this is the November 2019 Network Plus study group, and you would put the super secret code word of the month on that subject line, which is SNR. That is your super secret code word of the month, SNR. You could also put that in the body of the message as well. Just make sure it's very easy for me to find in there. And if you'd like to put anything else in that message, I'm the one reading through these and processing the continuing education unit credits, then you're welcome to do that as well. I can't necessarily reply to all of these because I get hundreds of these coming in, but I am more than happy to read through them. And your messages really, they are helpful. Anything you would like to put in there, more than happy to read through it. Thanks for doing that. So follow those instructions. I'll send you back. Usually it takes me about a week or so to process these and get them back to you, and that might help you as well. Super secret code word of the month, SNR. Let's do another question. We got time for another one, right? We can sneak this one in here. Here's your next multiple choice question to go through. This question asks, a systems administrator has configured a VoIP phone to download a configuration file using UDP69 when the phone is powered on. Which of the following is associated with this process? Is it TFTP? Is it SNMP? Is it DHCP? Is it RDP? Or is it SSH? A systems administrator has configured a VoIP phone to download a configuration file using UDP69 when the phone is powered on. Which of the following is associated with this process? Is it TFTP, SNMP, DHCP, RDP, or SSH? You think you know the answer? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer right there. Great way to do it right there. So that's one way you can go and figure out what these happen to be. Here's another example, of course, of trivia on the exam not helping you very much. This is probably a common situation. You're not going to run into a situation on the exam where people are where it's asking you that you need to answer, here's a port number, give me the protocol, or here's a protocol, give me the port number. You're not going to get a lot of those. You might get some, but the exam tends to go a little bit farther than that. And this is a really good example of this. You got VoIP here, you got phones, you got UDP69, you got a system administrator, you're powering on. There's a lot of things happening in this question. So you have to be able to piece all of this together and try to figure out, what does this mean? How does this work together? Am I really answering the right question with the answer? Because you sometimes will be going through a question, you think, oh, I know the answer to this, I know the answer, and you just answer and you didn't read through the entire question, and it turns out the answer is something else. So that's one that really doesn't help very much. You really have to read through the entire question. And I've been caught doing this. I'll have enough time. I'll go back through the questions and I'll just read through them since I have the time. And I've caught myself realizing I read that question completely wrong the first time through. That answer should be something very different. And I end up getting a few points just because I was able to do that. So you should do the same thing with these questions as well. Make sure you read them all the way through. You really interpret what they're trying to tell you, because each question is its own little world. Each question has its own specific set of details that you have to work with. You can't read into a question. You can't interpret beyond the scope of what the question is asking you. You have to go through these very carefully and figure out the details. Let's see how we did with this one. Not a lot of you've answered this one. I've noticed this one's taking a little bit longer to go through. So let's see how we did with this one. 68% of you say the answer is TFTP, but 18% of you said that's DHCP. Aha, you're powering on, right? 8% of you said SNMP. You've got 4% that said RDP. We've already talked about that today. And then you've got 2% of you that said SSH. Now, this is a real world question. This is how VoIP phones work. Is a voice over IP phone, it's just a dumb phone. There's nothing programmed really in the phone. There's not much there at all. If you have a bunch of phones that are unplugged, they are all effectively configured exactly the same way, which is to say that none of them have a configuration in them. This is because you often have to plug and unplug phones all the time. This phone goes bad, no problem. I'll unplug it. I'll give you a new one, plug the new one in, put it right there. You don't want to have to be there. Oh, you need a new phone? All right, let's program in what department you're in. Let's program in your phone number. You don't have to do any of that. VoIP phones are fantastic because all you have to do is plug them in. They get power from your Ethernet with power over Ethernet, PoE. And then the first thing the phone does, really after it gets an IP address, really the first thing it does is get a DHCP address. And then after it does that, it needs a configuration. So the first thing it does is ask around on the network, hey, where's the server for VoIP? I need to go talk to the controller. And usually it's a DNS query that does that. The DNS tells it, here's where you need to go. And then it talks to the controller and says, I need a configuration. I just got powered on. There's nothing going on here for me. I need to get powered on here. And the way you would do that is it says, hey, can you send me a configuration file? Please, here's everything I need to know. And then it sends that over a protocol called TFTP, the Trivial File Transfer Protocol. Now, why is it using TFTP to do this and not FTP, which FTP is the one that everybody uses, isn't it? To have all of these things here, the file transfer application protocols, TFTP and FTP. FTP requires a username and password. Well, for these phones, we can set it up so it doesn't require that if we use a protocol that doesn't require that, such as TFTP. Now, as other people are mentioning in the chat room, there's other different ways voice over IP phones can work. For example, if your DHCP service supports the ability to send down things like the controller for the phone, you can do that. Not all DHCP servers do support that option. So you do have to do it different ways, like with DNS. You'll find that there are so many new, if you're a voice over IP person, you're shaking your head like, I know. There's so many different ways to do this. Wait till you get into the differences between SIP implementations, between different manufacturers. It's a mess. That's why VoIP is its own science, has its own people, because it is such a unique from one vendor to another, to how all of these things operate. And then there's so many different changes. TFTP is perfect for this because there's no username and password that is required. We can simply just transfer a file. If in many ways, instead of being a formal FTP, it's trivial. It's just a trivial file transfer. And being able to do that also means that the file transfer client that runs on the voice over IP phone is much less overhead. There's much less that you have to program to be able to do that. So that's one that you would run into, to have all of those things there. TFTP is the right answer for this one. The Trivial File Transfer Protocol. When you saw UDP 69, you should have automatically, talking about trivia, automatically associated that with the correct protocol. So in many ways, this was almost a gimme question, wasn't it? TFTP was the answer. SNMP was answer B. The Simple Network Management Protocol is a protocol used by network management workstations to be able to gather statistics from infrastructure devices such as routers and switches and servers and firewalls and all of these other devices. So that's not what a voice over IP phone would use. 17% of you said DHCP. You were thinking you're powering on, so that's what you would use. But DHCP does not use UDP 69 to be able to send and receive those DHCP requests, although it is UDP. So you were close. But DHCP would not be the right answer for this one because it has to download a configuration file, and DHCP does not do configuration file downloads. The other option here is RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. We talked about RDP earlier, and we know that RDP is a remote desktop protocol used on Windows machines. It doesn't do file transfers for voice over IP phones that have just plugged in. So that's not one when you'd say you're working through this. And for SSH, well, we talked about Secure Shell before as well. Secure Shell is not one that has anything to do with downloading configuration files from a voice over IP phone using UDP69. However, SSH does do file transfers. So you'll notice in this question, I added a little bit more just to make sure you chose the right file transfer piece for this one. So UDP69 pointed to this because SSH, a neat little utility that does both remote screen terminal configurations, remote terminal configurations, and it does file transfers. It's built into the protocol. So that's one that you can work through, and being able to work through those and have all of those things there. Maybe that can help you in this view as well. That's that hopefully is one you got right. 68% of you chose A and got that one right. You got it absolutely correct in working through those. All of these questions today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded the CompTIA exam objectives, you are indeed doing yourself a disservice. Tons of material in here. This should be the first thing you look at when you start your studies, and it should be the last thing you use before walking into the exam room because it makes a fantastic checklist to see if you've really memorized and understood everything you need to know for the exam. Make sure you get a copy of this. The exam objectives, you can go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives, or you can go to professormesser.com/objectives and download your copy. I will simply redirect you over. There's a link there to redirect you over to the CompTIA website, so you can do that. Maybe that will help you as well. Well, we do one of these study groups for Network Plus every month. Of course, we do study groups almost every week. Last week, we did 2 A+ study groups. Next week at this time, we do a Security Plus study group. You may want to come back for that. If you're looking for the next Network Plus study group, you'll find it in December, on December the 11th. I think I still have that date set aside properly. I think that is the right date. Yes, it is. There's so much going on in December. I have to really check my schedule and make sure I've got all these things right. That is the right date for that one. One of the things that you'll find as you go through these study groups, you may be watching this on the replay. This may be well after December the 11th. So you can always find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar. And that may be a good way for you to figure out when you can stop in and join us for another one of these live events. Well, the part where I ask you the question is over, but we're not done yet. You now get to ask me a question. We're going to turn this around so that you can call in on the phone lines. You can put questions into the chat room. You can do that as well. Find all of those here. I've got those. We'll get you started on that in just a moment. In the meantime, don't forget we have a monthly question or weekly question on Twitter for your Network Plus Q&A. You find that at professormesser.com/Twitter. Of course, all my videos, and you can subscribe very easily out on the YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. And we've got course notes. Don't forget about those. You can find those at professormesser.com/NPCN. Stands for Network Plus Course Notes. And of course, if you'd like to help us in other ways, you can, of course, if you go out to Amazon, the professormesser.com/Amazon link will help you as well. Well, stick around for the next hour. We've got plenty of Q&A. Thanks for joining us in our first hour of the study group. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Let's see if I can get my questions set up so you can call in. This will take just a moment, everyone, for these. We'll get this piece of it here. The chat room, some folks are asking about the song, the intro-outro song that plays on the podcast. I don't even know what that song is. It's just a stock audio that I purchased for this. Because you can't use real songs. You have to use a stock audio song so you don't get in copyright trouble. It is a neat little fun song. It reminds me of Nollins. I wanted something kind of upbeat. I kind of like that one. Let's get this up and running. Bear with me a moment while you will be seemingly ignored while I try to get everything started on my side with my Skype and type all these things. That's the wrong thing. Didn't type that right. There we go. Then I'll show you exactly how you can ask questions in the chat room and call in if you would like to. We'll take questions however you would like to answer them. And they could be questions about anything. One of the things we do here is just answer questions. So it doesn't even have to be about CompTIA or technology in general if you want. We'll figure it out for all of these things. We'll figure out all of this. Let's see if this will even answer. You can hear it ringing there in the background. I don't have this turned up very loud. I have to type things in on my side and press a button. And then I'll enter a number here and make sure this works. And the nice lady says, welcome. There we go. So we would like to figure out all of these. The way that you can participate is to put your questions into the chat room. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can do it from there. And also, if you're watching at professormesser.com/live, it's the same chat room. It's the YouTube chat. So we'll figure out all of those to be able to make that happen. If you would like to call in, you can call in anywhere in the continental United States at 855-785-RJ45. We also, west of the Rockies, can call in at 855-785-7545 and be able to call in and talk to me directly. If you are anywhere else outside the continental U.S., you can also call in for free. And you can do that by putting a plus. Go to Skype. Skype is the free thing that allows you to do this. Open up your Skype and put a +1 at the beginning so that the phone number is +1 855-785-7545. It's a toll-free number, so you don't have any Skype minutes required. I pick up the tab for those when you are working through those and being able to figure it out, hopefully. Questions in the chat room. Professor, do you teach CCNA? That would be the Cisco Certified Network Associate exam. And as many of you are aware, the Cisco exams, especially the CCNA routing and switching, because there are many different CCNA certification exams right now. The CCNA is undergoing an enormous change, and you're finding they're taking all of those separate exams and squishing them down into one single exam in February. We're doing this in November, so we're months away from having those things happen. So when you get to those, you'll find that there's going to be a lot of new content for the Cisco. A lot of you know that I have the Cisco, the CCNA routing and switching ICND1, first half of the exam. I have course notes available for this and being able to have those on my website. I'd love to do more CCNA content. Hopefully I'll be able to make that happen once they have that change in place. I'm looking forward to see what all the nuances are of the change. I like what I've seen so far, so who knows? We'll see what happens in February. I'd love to be able to do that. I know Security Plus is coming up for an update shortly. Maybe I can squeeze in there with all that. That'd be kind of fun. I think Cisco and really networking in general, which is where I really cut my teeth in IT, love doing it. Love the Cisco certifications. I like the tools that are available with the virtualization on the screen. I have a lot of ideas of things we could do to have fun with those. So hopefully that will be something that we can do with all of those pieces. I'm going to bring up the phone lines now. Let's go to the first line, which is the 858 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling in. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Frank. I'm calling from San Diego, California.
Hey, Frank. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hi, I took my Network Plus exam a couple of weeks ago, and I passed it thanks to you.
Nice. Congratulations.
I wanted to call and just personally thank you.
Absolutely. So on the exam, and obviously we can't talk about details of the exam because you signed a non-disclosure agreement. You signed that candidate agreement when you started. But if you had to give one piece of advice to the people that are listening in who are getting ready to go take their Network Plus or in the process of studying, what type of advice would you give to them?
Know your wireless stuff really good.
I think that's a pretty good piece of advice. There's a huge section of the exam that is wireless, and there's so many pieces of information in there. They sort of cram half the exam, it seems, into this tiny little section of a domain. And you're right, the exam seems to not only ask you about wireless in that context, but it also goes outside the scope for troubleshooting that. It's just all over the place, it seems. It's probably a pretty good line of attack. Now that you've finished up Network Plus, what is next on your plate?
Well, I was wondering if I could take a few minutes to just talk about what the kids call my journey.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So how did you get from there to here?
Okay, well, I lost my job maybe 8 months ago.
Ouch.
And I was thinking life is too short to do what you don't like.
So
and I
true.
always liked networking.
What were you doing
So I
before
said,
that?
I'm going to start. I was doing customer support. It didn't really get that technical, but I was like, you would have a customer pull up their IP address and it would get a 169 address and say, oh, that's not going to work for you.
Turn it off and turn it back on
You're getting
again.
a 169. Yeah, so that made me interested in about networking, and I was thinking about A plus or Network Plus, and I decided to go for Network Plus, and I would Google it, and every time Professor Messer would show up, and you have a very good reputation in the community as a good instructor for this. So I decided to go and study, and there's like places they want for thousands of dollars.
I know. It's
for
crazy.
online courses.
Yep.
It's like amazing. And I decided self-study is the way for me to go. So as far as the YouTube videos, I watched yours. I watched another one, Sunny Classroom, SUNNY, and
Right.
Mike Myers.
Great.
And then as far as books, I liked Mike Myers' videos, so I got his book. I got another book by Todd Lamel and another one, MindTap, Network Plus Guide. The Mike Myers books, I didn't really care for it. I mean, I liked his videos, and that's the reason I got his book. But his book didn't really jive with me. The one that I liked a lot was Todd Lamel.
Okay.
And then the MindTap, the Network Plus Guide to Networks, I used that as a deep dive
Nice.
into subjects that I felt like I'm going to get more, understand better. So, and that was it. And then, by the way, on the day of the test, I didn't know I had the test. I thought I'd reschedule it. They want you to be there 15 minutes early, and I got up in the morning and I thought I had to schedule the doctor's appointment. Turns out, no. I looked up the email and said, "Oh, I have my test today." Luckily, the test center was only 5 minutes away, so I got there like 5 minutes late. But the proctor was so nice; he said, "You can take it."
That's nice.
So at that point, I didn't have any nerves anymore. I wasn't nervous because I figured I had already lost it and I'd lost my money. So maybe that kind of freed me to take the test without any anxiety. And I finally I passed it. I was surprised.
Nice. This is you almost followed my recommendations almost to a T, and I think you probably just organically figured it out along the way. As I tell people, you need to watch videos and you need a book and you need to do these hands-on things, but it sure helps if you have even more of those. And I think that your path through an example of the books that you went through was a really good example of this, where you had 3 different books. You were kind of able to pull different things from different books, it sounded like, and ultimately found one that really worked with you much better than others do. And it's a personal preference thing. And I always tell people what book works for one person may not necessarily have the same feel for you. You may need a different book that teaches you in a different way. And I'm glad you were able to do that. Although I would not recommend forgetting about the date and time. That one that's a pretty crucial one, because you don't get your money back if you miss the appointment. So glad you were able to do that.
You don't. You're right.
Have you taken exams at that location previously?
This was my first.
Okay, but you knew where it was. It was 5 minutes away.
It was 5 minutes, and that's why I got lucky. So I figured
you did get lucky.
I thought I'm late. When I
Right.
got up, I didn't even take a shower.
Right.
I just said, I'm going to show up, see what happens.
Wow. Yeah, you can't hurt at that point.
I
You're
thought
out the
worst
money
possible
anyway,
case.
right?
Right. I thought worst possible case, okay, you're late, you lost your money, you want to take it again, you pay again. So I think that kind of like freed me, because I was taking the test. I have nothing to lose. So I wasn't as anxious as I would be where
That's
I had
great.
like prepared. I don't know, but it worked out.
It worked out. That's the important part of having that there. And then you got to find the thing that works for you, and that certainly did. Well, that is a ridiculous story that nobody else should do it that way unless maybe it works. And then maybe we all should do it that way. Just forget you have it and then suddenly show up 5 minutes.
It wasn't my intention to do it that way. It just happened that way because and now I'm studying for CCNA.
Okay.
And I'm loving it.
Great.
Because the Network Plus gave me the theory. And now that I'm studying CCNA, I'm putting it into practice.
Whenever I went through and created CCNA content, the thing I really found about CCNA, and I tell people this all the time, it is a tough set of exam requirements. It's a very deep exam. It's not as broad as Network Plus, but boy, it is a deep exam. You really have to know a lot. And when you already have the Network Plus foundation there, you don't have to worry with the small stuff. You can kind of jump right into how do I make this switch work? How do I make this router work? How do I make all of these protocols do what I want them to do and not have to worry so much about the terminology that's being used? Hopefully that's helping you too.
I really appreciate your videos, sir. When I first researched this and I would do a Google search for Network Plus, your name will show up. And I would read the explanation by users. You're very respected in this, so I really appreciate your help.
Well, I did the easy part. You were the one that had to actually learn these things and get there on time and take the exam. So you're the one that had to struggle through the hard stuff. So congratulations to that, and best of luck with your CCNA studies.
Thank you, Professor Messer. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the call. That's fantastic. I want to say do exactly what Frank did, but don't do it exactly like Frank did. Go pass that exam. Go just crush it. One of the things I wanted to do when I created this video series, and I'm glad it's worked out this way, is I've already worked in the industry as a systems engineer. I've already done network designs. I've already implemented networks. I've already created security designs for networks and put them into these big networks and being able to work through these. So I'm glad I'm able to bring some of that into the Network Plus. That's one of the things that was important to us when we put this series together. So I'm glad it worked out for Frank and some of those things were there. Let's do some other calls. Let's hop to area code 402. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Tyler, and I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for calling.
How's it going?
Thanks. Appreciate you calling in. How are things in Nebraska?
It's really, really cold. I don't want to be outside.
I don't blame you. Well, it's a good place to study. What can we do for you?
Yeah, so I just passed my A+ last week, so I wanted to thank you for helping me out with that.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
I found that your study groups were really helpful to go back and look at, and I passed both exams on my first try with no IT background, so just wanted to thank you for that.
I'm glad. Whenever we put these study groups together, it obviously takes a bit of time to write the questions and to have all the content here and make sure that we're able to get the new questions out. And it obviously takes time to do all of these things. But it's I get feedback like this all the time. Like that was the thing that really helped us on the exam, was some of kind of breaking apart these questions and really going deep into why an answer was right and why these other answers were wrong. That's what I wanted when I took my exams. So I'm glad that's something that could help you as well. What is your next step now on this path of certification?
Yeah, so I've been studying for my Network Plus for a couple of days now, but I mainly had a question about getting a job in IT, because I don't have any experience in IT, and now that I have my certification, my next step is to try to get a job.
Right.
And I'm just a little curious about like I could get a job now. I already have a job, but like if I get more certifications, maybe I could wait and get a better job, or maybe I should just try to get experience right away and try to get a job right now. So I had a question about that, and I guess how I'd go about doing it, because it's one thing to get a certification, but it's another thing to actually land a position in IT with the certification that you get.
Right. Is this the job that you have now? Is it a job that is in IT, or is it a technical type position?
No, it's not.
Okay. So this would be, you're trying to get that foot in the door. And that's in my world, and the way I look at getting job in IT, that probably is one of the hardest parts of getting into the industry. And it can be very frustrating to make that happen, because until it happens, you don't have that IT job yet. Once you are in IT, it becomes so much easier to move up because you've already got that IT experience behind you. It's getting that first initial experience that's the hard part. In your particular geography, are there places that have Microsoft user groups or Cisco user groups? Have you been able to look through some of those?
I haven't, but I know that there's a place here that's like specifically like a technology library where they do have some of those types of groups. So
nice.
Maybe I could do that.
That is probably you've spent
and do some research.
Absolutely. You've spent all this time doing people research. Spent all this time doing the technical research. You've learned about networking on the wire. Now you have to do networking with the people. And in my mind, it is sort of the missing link that a lot of people don't look at. They spend a lot of time putting resumes together and just blindly sending them out and hoping to get a response back without doing a little more strategic type of job hunt. And by strategic, I mean meeting people. I use this example a lot in my study groups where in my IT career, I probably had 15 different jobs in IT. I worked on a help desk. I worked with desktop administration. I did server administration. I worked in network administration. I did systems engineering for protocol analyzers. I did systems engineering, and I worked for a VAR. I did systems engineering for firewall companies. It's a wide range of things. But the very first job I got, I didn't know anybody who worked there. They hired me straight out of college. It was kind of a low-level grunt job where I had to travel around the city delivering printer cables. It was effectively that level of technology. And then I was able to move up a little bit there and do some storage installation and memory upgrades and just little things. But every job I got after that, so the other 14 jobs that I had in IT after that, every single one of those jobs, I knew someone who worked there. Those people I knew weren't always in the IT department, but it was somebody who worked at the company. And it is remarkable how when there is a connection like that, where you're talking to an interviewer and you mention, oh, I happen to know Mary in accounting. I happen to know Joe who works on your server team. They go, oh, you know Mary? Oh, that's great. Okay. It's suddenly the room changes. Something about the chemicals in the air change. The greens are greener and the blues are bluer. Something happens and people recognize that there's a personal connection that makes you a little more trustworthy in the eyes of the person who's doing the interviewing. And so I found that knowing someone became an important part of the strategy going forward. In fact, that's how LinkedIn became so popular. That's why it's now this enormous behemoth, because knowing people is just as important as what you know. Some people say it's more important. It is at a minimum just as important as what you happen to know with your skill sets, because you can get a job so much easier that way. Plus, when you have people looking out for you and you can ask them, hey, what does it take to get in on your help desk over there? They'll go ask the help desk team. And the help desk team will say, well, just send me his resume. Let's see, let's check it out. There's a connection there. So find these people in the industry. You don't have to hang out with them all day. You don't have to be their friend. You don't have to go to their child's christening, but it helps if you go to a Microsoft user group meeting. You meet the people that are managing these Microsoft systems in these large companies in the area and the small companies in the area. You are creating connections. You're getting on their LinkedIn. And many times these people are compensated for bringing people into their organization. They get a finder's fee for bringing in an employee and having them work at the company. So very often in these user group meetings, they'll even ask you, oh, you're looking for a job. Why don't you send me your resume? Get on my LinkedIn, send me your resume, and I'll pass it through to HR, and maybe we can get somebody to talk to you. And if you get hired, then you'll have a job, and I'll get a couple $100 to put in my pocket. So they are encouraged to involve you in the hiring process. You just have to first meet them. And that's the hardest part. And that's why I often say, go to these user group meetings. There's a huge density of these people. Everybody's more than happy to talk about what they're doing. You can ask very specific questions. Oh, you work at company X? I'm looking for a help desk job. what types of things does your help desk handle? What types of skill sets are they looking for? Do you think I should send a resume? Can I give it to you? Should we send it to somebody at the help desk? What would you recommend I do? People are so happy to give you some suggestions that way. You're at a user group meeting. You're all working together. What a great place to do that. And that's why I give that example that if you're trying to get that foot in the door, it's the hardest part. Why not make it a little bit easier and a little more strategic by meeting some of those people? So go out to Google, go out to meetup.com, which is a completely legitimate site, and look for Microsoft user group, look for Cisco user group. Those are probably two of the biggest ones. And then you'll also find other user groups. In my area, there's a WordPress user group. Well, I'm a WordPress user, so maybe that's a user group I would go to. Those things can really, really help you in your job hunt.
Okay, awesome. Would you say what would be the most common job that someone would get with just an A+ certification if they don't have any IT experience?
Would it
be like a help desk position?
It would be. The vast majority are help desk positions. They are the entry-level positions. And what a lot of companies will do is the help desk is how they start figuring out where to put you next. So if you get into the help desk and they find that you're very knowledgeable with Microsoft servers, and whenever there's a Microsoft server ticket, you work very well with the Microsoft server team, then they are more apt to move you into that server team. In fact, once you get in the door, the way that I helped move up from my help desk into, right after that went into server administration, is the server teams and the network teams and everybody else in IT, they're doing work on the weekends. They have to do upgrades. They have to change out machines. They have to do replacements of hardware. This is a great time to ask them, hey, do you need any help? Need a warm body to help move things around? You got to set up a whole room full of training systems. You got to unbox 24 different computers. If you need a warm body, I can come in on Saturday and help you with that. More than happy to help you. And then you get to know them. You get to find out more about what they do. You get to learn more about their particular jobs. They get to know what you're doing. And they get to know that you're coming in on a Saturday and helping them, which is really nice. It's an investment into your future. A lot of people look at it as, they're not paying me to go in on Saturday. Why should I do that? Well, they're not paying you yet to go in on Saturday. But if you go on Saturday, you may find that it pays you more in the future. And those are the things you have to really keep an eye open and ask about. Sometimes they'll fall into your lap, but more often than not, you're making it happen. And that's one very easy way to make it happen once you get in the door.
And then also, you probably, when you're first starting out, would you recommend, if someone's willing to hire you to, not even get paid as much just to get that experience under your belt? Or how would you balance that?
It is a balancing act. Some organizations would prefer that you were more knowledgeable and you had certifications under your belt and they will pay you appropriately. Other organizations prefer that you not be certified, that you not have a formal set of experience. They will hire you for less and then you will learn as you go. Both are good strategies to follow. I think my first job, I was paid very little at the beginning, but I had already negotiated, hey, if this works out, and after 3 months, you're happy with what you're seeing, can we at that point consider an opportunity to do a job evaluation and see if I could be paid more? And they said, yeah, if we can get somebody to stick around for 3 months, yes. And you're doing a good job, and you're coming in on time, and you're working hard, yeah. And they did give me a raise after 3 months to a higher amount, the part that we negotiated before. It worked out just fine. Those are things that can happen and work well, because if they don't know you, they don't know. Do you come in late? Are you bad to work with? Do you have a bad personality? You sound good in this interview, but it doesn't always work out that way. Do you have some weird quirk about you that makes it difficult for other people to work with you? Sometimes you can figure out in the interview, sometimes you can't. So some places might hedge their bets a bit. Well, you can always call them on that, negotiate on that, and say, hey, if this works out after 3 months or 6 months, rather than waiting a year, most companies will wait a year, or they'll wait for the beginning of the year to be able to provide any type of job evaluation. Can we do this job evaluation in 3 months and see if I'm worth a little more to you? I'll work hard if I'm compensated, and they'll say yes or no, and you'll know where you stand. It's sometimes getting your foot in the door is worth a little bit less money on the front end. And I will tell you, in IT, there's no ceiling. There's no upper level. As long as you keep working hard and learning and finding those new roles that people are unwilling to do, you'll get paid a lot of money in this industry. Sometimes you just need a way to start that. And if you use that as a balancing act between I'll get paid less now with the idea that in 6 months I'm going to be moving to the next thing anyway, I think that's a win-win.
Okay. Yeah, because I did have a situation where for the last 2 months, I got an internship with a startup for a field service technician, and I've been doing that. And then I got my A+, but the job offer was like $15 an hour. So I'm making more than that with what I'm doing now, which is why I asked that question, because I'm considering taking the position, but just because I don't have any IT experience, but I wasn't too sure like if it would even be worth the pay cut, because it's a pretty significant pay cut based on what I'm doing now. But it's like, is it worth taking that cut and then gaining experience and then using that experience to try to find better opportunities elsewhere?
This is sort of the business question that everybody who is either working in any industry, or especially I think people that are starting a business, out of the gate, you know your business is not going to be profitable. You know, for the first year or maybe first 2 years that you're going to be paying off all the equipment that you had to buy. You've got new employees you have to pay for. You know that the first couple of years are going to be lean, and you put something away in the bank and hopefully you're going to be able to get through it. You make some adjustments in your lifestyle so that you know in year 3 and in year 5 and in year 10, you're now well ahead of the curve. So it's a business decision you have to make. For you, it's more of a personal decision, but it effectively it's a financial decision you have to make for your future. Is it worth the upside? Do you know, or do you have a plan that if you go in and work $15 an hour for this job, in 6 months, where do you go next? What is the next step for you? And how much money do you think that's going to be? Do you think that's viable? Is there risk involved? Yeah, of course. There's risk with anything we do. And you will make some very bad decisions when you move from job to job. Everybody does. I certainly did. Not all 15 of those jobs were winners, but most of them were. But you do run into that. Sometimes you get a little bit of a setback and then you have to readjust, but you keep going. The real benefit in IT, and this is different than manufacturing or food service or medical or these other areas that are not technology associated, there is always a way up. There's always a next step forward. There's always a way to make more money in this industry. So I say, if you can find a way to get your foot in the door, which is so difficult to do, and there's an opportunity in front of you to do that, you know, if you're able to make that happen, that might be a good investment in your future. That may be the right business decision to make, knowing that 5 years from now, you're going to be well past this. You're going to be on to doing Microsoft or Cisco or VMware or whatever that next thing is that you're going to work on. And you'll be looking back at that job thinking, wow, I'm 4 jobs, every year I'm doing a different job, or every 2 years, I'm 3 or 5 jobs now from that. And you look back and wonder, wow, that was a crazy time. But these things happen fast in IT, and you should be able to take advantage of that.
Great. I appreciate the advice. It does make a lot of sense. So, because from an employer's perspective, it's like, hey, if this person has experience and someone's trusted them with this position, it means a lot more to them than just, hey, I got a certification, but now I actually have someone trusting in me to do a position in IT that's, said that I did a good job.
I think it means a lot more than a lot of people realize. I appreciate the call, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
That's one that I think can help a lot of people too. If you're in, we were talking about this on the CompTIA subreddit probably yesterday. The CompTIA subreddit has a Discord channel, and there's a lot of conversations on the Discord channel about jobs and where do I go, what do I do, and there are those fundamental things where, and I mentioned this earlier, looking for a job is more than just blasting out your resume to everybody and hoping that you get something back. That is not going to work. That's what everybody tries to do. There needs to be a different strategy to it. There needs to be, it's not a game, but it's a chess match. It's trying to figure out how to make yourself the most available and presentable as you can be. If you want to do anything in technology. If you want to have a website, you need to make your website look as nice as it can look to Google, so Google will put you higher in the rankings. It's the same scenario when you're looking for a job. You want to get a job where you look the best possible way you can look when that employer finally puts your resume in front of them. I don't think your resume going in front of an employer should be the first thing they see. I think you should have already done a lot of other work. You should work with, go to those user group meetings, meet those people, find out what they like to do, find out, are there things that you can participate in? In fact, are they doing some of these big projects where they're rolling out these large training centers? This is one I got involved with. It was we were probably rolling out, it was for a call center. There was a new customer coming on board. This was a third-party call center, and we needed 100 new seats, 100 new people taking phone calls that we previously did not have. So at the time, I was the director of voice and data networking. So I had a bunch of people working under me, but this was kind of an all-hands-on-deck kind of thing on a Saturday where we had 100 empty desks. All of them needed a computer in front of them by Monday. And we had a stack of them in the corner. Well, we all showed up on a Saturday, and we all started unboxing. And we just started rolling out all of these, and we had them done in a couple of hours, thankfully. We had all these people there that were willing to help. We would have taken any warm body that asked. We would have taken people off the call center floor, somebody taking calls, wanted to get in IT. This was a great opportunity for that warm body to get in, and we would have set up all of these systems, but we would have met them. We would have find out, why you usually take calls. Why are you here setting up this? Oh, want to get into IT. Tell me what you do. Tell me what your interest is. Whenever I see somebody doing that kind of thing, I immediately start looking and saying, well, they're a go-getter. They're trying to find every possible way to get in. And that makes me think I need to learn more about what they're doing, because they are willing to do that extra step to get there and make those things work. And Bill in the chat room is right. You can volunteer for experience. If there is a church that you're associated with, if there is a nonprofit that you know of, and they just need somebody to make sure that their antivirus is up to date, that their operating system patches are installed, that they've got backups just in case somebody clicks the wrong thing and suddenly ransomware appears. Do they have a way to recover without sending somebody Bitcoins? That's such a simple thing to set up. You probably already have the skills to do it. You can use built-in systems and things that are already available for free. Why not make that happen? Goes right on a resume. Do you have experience? Absolutely. Let me tell you about these things I was doing down at this nonprofit. And now they are protected against ransomware. They are up to date with all their latest patches. We updated their firewall so nobody's going to be able to attack them. Those are valuable stories to tell in an interview. You did it for free. They were happy to have you come in and do it. You've got the skills to be able to do it. In fact, you probably learned some things along the way as you were putting these things together. You get to work with people, because I often say, this is not about technology. This is not about you working with computers. None of this has anything to do with you working with computers. This has to do with you working with someone else who happens to have a computer. That's the difference. And that's what you should focus on for all of these, to have this here. In the chat room, people are mentioning this, that sometimes technical people are introverts, but I've not really found that. I don't think that most of them are. I worked as a systems engineer for a lot of different manufacturing companies. Let's say manufacturing, but companies that made hardware and software, companies that made firewalls. And I would travel constantly. That's all I did in the last bulk of the jobs that I had. Is I would get up on a Monday, I would go to the airport, I'd fly to a city, we'd meet with customers. I spend the night in a hotel, go meet with 3 or 4 customers the next day, hop on another plane, go to another city, meet with 3 or 4 customers. That's all I did all week. But I got to meet with so many different companies and so many different people. Very rarely did we run into a situation where somebody just did not have any social skills. In fact, I can't really think of any instance where that really happened. Everybody I was meeting in network teams, in security teams, in server teams, were just great, normal people. They were just people doing their IT job. I think we have I think the media and perhaps some of the movies and television shows tend to make technical people look as if they are inept or dumb or incapable of interacting with other human beings. I never ran into that. We always had something to talk about. We would always have great times whenever we worked with these things. Like one of the callers earlier, life is short. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, you should go find the thing that is much more fun for you. Because the other people doing it that I met who were networking people, security people, technology people, we were loving what we were doing. But we would also have other things we do. Let's go to lunch. We talk about the football games that we were watching. We talk about what they did, the things that they would do on the weekend. Some people had really interesting stories about they would race cars on the weekend, or their kids were involved with certain events that were interesting. And of course, I got to meet people that were working in interesting places. I would put equipment and technologies into nuclear power plants, into breweries, into car manufacturing facilities. These are all amazing. You walk in the door and lines of beer going by, or you walk into a nuclear power plant and there's guys there with automatic weapons behind the door after you get through because they're protecting the plant. Or you walk into the car place and they make you put on a different smock over your clothes so that you don't rub up against a car and scratch it. Like, I'm just here to work on the computer stuff, right? Oh no, you're walking down on the floor to get there. You've got to put this on. It's remarkable what you often find yourself seeing, the things you find yourself doing. All of it was interesting. All of it had a story. I didn't find any of the people we worked with to be introverted. In fact, some of the most creative people you'll find will be in IT. We run up across such weird problems all the time. Sometimes they're problems we can easily fix. Sometimes the problems need a little bit more creative solution. We have limitations in budget. We have limitations in the technology available to us. We have limitations in time. Those things you have to kind of put all together and come up with a plan. Well, we can't do this because we don't have that newer hardware, but if we did this, it would get us through the next couple of months. Okay, go do that. Those types of things really are remarkable to be able to be able to put together those plans, to be able to work with other people, strategize, come up with options, and then implement those options to see what happens. Sometimes it worked great. Sometimes it did not work great, but worked good enough. And sometimes that's all that matters, is if you can make it work good enough, you're going to be fine. And I think all of you are going to be fine too. I want to thank you for being here for this first hour of the Q&A and for hanging out in the after show. I appreciate your questions from the chat room. Thank you for your questions on the call-in lines. There's always something new to learn, and I'm more than happy to follow you along with this process and figure out what we're going to do next. It's always interesting to me. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.